This first little device, I've actually featured this on the channel before. This is arguably the very worst laptop in the entire world. This is one of the very first HP minis. It was a netbook at the time of release. Features an Intel Atom processor with 2 cores, and it shipped with Windows 7 Starter Edition. And to say that this is a piece of e-waste is an understatement. Additionally, we have here something that isn't e-waste. This is a good old trusty ThinkPad T450. These things are awesome because they're moderately powerful, and you could get them on the used market for anywhere between $200 or $300, depending on where you are. And what we're going to be doing in this video is talking about turning old tech like this into a usable home server. And particularly these laptops, because laptops actually have a little advantage over other things you may want to use as a server, such as an old desktop, a little mini PC like I used to use, or trying to actually buy an old used server. First advantage is the built-in screen and keyboard, obviously. It makes maintenance and setup and all that on these things incredibly easy, and people in actual server racks spend a good chunk of change in order to add like a rack-mounted keyboard monitor setup. Second thing is most laptops have a Wi-Fi card that works, so if super high bandwidth rates aren't that important, you could actually have this set up anywhere in your house with basically one cord. And probably one of the most important things with laptops like this is this right here. The batteries of a laptop acts as a UPS, as if the power goes out, the laptop battery will keep it running at least for a couple hours or so. And that's awesome because people spend hundreds of dollars on these types of systems. And of course, form factor isn't always the most ideal for having a server setup, but in this video there will be some additional tips and tricks that we will be getting into right after I tell you about the sponsor of today's video, ProtoArc and their EKM01 ergonomic keyboard and mouse combo. And after a few weeks, I do notice that I'm typing a little bit more efficiently and have less strain on my wrists. The mouse and keyboard here both are wireless. It does ship with a USB dongle, but there are 3 channels, so you could either use the USB dongle or 2 different Bluetooth devices. The keyboard has some scissor switches. Sounds, feels good, it's super clicky, while the mouse, on the other hand, has more of a gentle, soft click. It fits very well in the hand. You got your side buttons here. This button in the middle is a DPI switch that you could switch between 800 to 2000. I've been using this one off and on, to be quite honest with you. I've been using their trackball mouse here, which is a different product. Active battery life of both of these guys is 90 days with up to 6 months of standby time. Overall, modern, sleek, very comfortable to use, and I would recommend them. And of course, if you're interested in either of these products or this trackball mouse and many of the other things that they have, use the code Techhut to go ahead and save an additional 10%. Now, I tried to use this as a server, but it just is not performant enough to do some of the things that I would want to do with it. The only server distribution that would work on it was Ubuntu 20.04. I did manage to get Jellyfin spun up, but it would not read data. There was incredible lag within the terminal. But using it for a basic service like hosting an internal website, or using it just as a bare bones basic FTP server for moving files around within your home network, this thing could work remarkable. But doing things like hosting an Nextcloud instance, I tried installing the snap package of that. Incredibly slow. I mean, just download speeds were limited to like 2 megabytes per second in my local network because of the processing power of the actual Atom CPU. But nonetheless, it is low power, and you can use something this bad as a server if you really wanted to. Stepping up the ladder a bit, we have this old, well, it's not old, it's like 2014 ThinkPad laptop that I actually started this channel with. This was the laptop that I was using to do all my first like little Windows videos and stuff I was making. Okay, so to do this, you are obviously going to need that laptop we talked about, and you can follow this guide if you're using a desktop or whatever. I just think laptops are cool to do this with. Power source, obviously you're going to need an internet connection. Additionally, you will need a USB because we are going to be putting a distro on this and then booting it onto our laptop. And when it comes to actually picking your distribution, it really doesn't matter. There's a whole bunch of options. You have Ubuntu, which is what I usually use for a server distro. Great for a server, not so good desktop. Fedora is really good if you want more frequent releases. And of course, you could go with something incredibly stable like a Debian. You could go with a Red Hat Enterprise Linux clone like Alma Linux, CentOS, Stream. There's a whole bunch of options, and I'm going to be linking down below to an article with all the options. But generally, for my use case, I usually go with Ubuntu or Fedora, which Fedora is what we're going to be playing around with in this video. With that, Fedora Server, the official edition, we're going to go ahead and give that a quick download. And in order to actually flash it to our USB, there's a variety of tools that you could go ahead and use. There's actually Fedora Media Writer if you want to use that. Additionally, there's tools like Rufus, there's Ventoy. I have a whole separate video on that if you want to be able to put multiple things on a single USB. If you're on a Linux system, you could use GNOME disks, which is generally what I use. But since I'm over here on macOS, I'm going to go ahead and fire up Etcher. And then once we have our USB burned, you're going to want to plug it into that computer that you're going to be installing it on. Shut down the we'll make sure it's completely shut down. Turn on the computer, and then you're going to want to go into your boot menu or your BIOS. Now, depending on the computer, it could be escape, delete, it could be one of the function buttons. It will probably flash what it is really quick with the motherboard boot screen. For the ThinkPad in particular, it is enter, so I press that, go into my boot menu, and select this USB, the Kingston Data Traveler. For you, it's probably going to be something different. Now, when it comes to that laptop, I couldn't get my capture card working because it doesn't have a proper HDMI. But right here, the installation process is going to be the same. This is a quick little virtual machine. We're going to go ahead and install Fedora 36. Of course, you could go ahead and test the media, but for me, I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into the installation process. And here we go. This is the installation. It will look basically the exact same for you. The resolution might be a little bit better. But what you're going to do is go ahead and pick your language. I'm English United States, so we're going to go ahead and continue from there. And now here, this is where it's going to look a little bit different than a normal Fedora install, as we're going to have some more options available to us. Keyboard, US, good. English, good. I am in the Los Angeles time zone, good. Thankfully, nowhere near there. Installation source is going to be local media. Now, we will have some software selection. I'm usually not going to want anything in here, but you have options for container management tools, guest agents, and a couple other things. You could look into these tools specifically, but for just basic personal server use that we're going to do today, the regular Fedora Server edition with no additional software for now is going to be completely fine. Now, system right here under installation destination, this is where you're going to want to pick your hard drive. Now, generally, if you're just going to use the default hard drive on there, you could go ahead and select it, hit done. And for me, it didn't ask to reclaim, but you may get a little dialog that comes up. If you already had something installed on your hard drive asking you to reclaim the space, just go click delete all. Reclaim space, done, and then you're good to go. It'll automatically partition it, and life is wonderful. And obviously, we are going to be wiping this drive. So if you have anything on it currently, you're going to want to go ahead and back that up. Network and hostname, I already have it wired connected. If you do need to connect to Wi-Fi, this is the place that you're going to do it. And make sure you can do it now, because you're going to want to make sure that you're not going to run into any issues once you do have it installed. Right here, you have root account and user creation. Now, root account, you can go ahead and enable this if you want to, but generally I just go ahead and keep it disabled because it's not really good to do things as root anyway. And under user creation, we have this check right here, add administrative privileges to this user account, which is what we're going to want to do. So in this case, I'm going to go type in my name, change this to just Brandon. Give yourself a strong, complicated, and secure password. And of course, you're going to want to go ahead and require a password for this if it's admin. This is a server. It's going to be connected to your home network, and you don't want people getting into it. So I'm going to hit done, and I'm going to hit done again because the password wasn't actually that secure. And then from there, we just go ahead and begin the installation. And of course, depending on the actual USB, your hardware, and all that, it may take anywhere from a couple minutes to 10-20 minutes. And then when the installation is complete, it'll look just like this. So we'll go ahead and reboot our system here. At this point, once it's at the post screen, you can go ahead and remove that USB. And here we are. This is how you know that everything was successful. We have Fedora Linux here that we could go ahead and boot into. And there we go. So here is our web console. This is actually going to be a much easier way to go ahead and manage this. But if you do want to log in and manage it through the actual computer, you could do so, of course. But going forward, let's go ahead and connect to this local IP address right here. All right, so we got Fedora installed, and I went to this URL right here, this local IP address at the port 9090 on my local browser here, and we are greeted with this. Now, one of the reasons why I really like Fedora is actually include a little GUI like this out of the box. So here, Gonna go ahead and type in that name for the user I created as well as the password. Save that, and here we are in our dashboard. This is real nice because here we can go ahead and see our CPU, our memory usage. So you can see I'm using about 24% of my CPU just at idle. It's probably going to drop down a little bit. This was the very first login. It's doing some things, as you can see. And then over here we have our memory usage, our host name, and some more information here, including the machine model, uptime. If I view the hardware details specifically, you can see I can see all that here, including the BIOS versions, the specific 5th generation Intel CPU I have, and you could actually get a lot more stuff. So if you go to logs, we can see what's going on there. A couple error messages, but nothing that seems very important. Storage here, this is nice. Gives us a good rundown of how much of our storage we're actually using and our read-write speeds and all that. And then of course we have NFS mounts that you could set up here if you have a separate like Synology NAS or something that you want to connect this to, even though that kind of the purpose of that wouldn't make sense unless if you're installing this on like a much more powerful machine than what your NAS can provide. Networking information here, typical stuff you'd expect, including enabling, disabling firewalls. You have rules to edit here, so a lot of basic administrative stuff that you need to do over there on the command line or in the terminal can actually be done here on the little Fedora default dashboard. You can see right here, this is all the services running, and then you have tools, so we have applications here, Cell Linux, software updates, no authentication. So right here, I have limited access. This is probably a sudo command, so I'm going to authenticate that. It's going to then check for updates, and you can see we could do all that through here as well. So real quick, I'm just going to go ahead and install all of the updates to get that out of the way, and there it goes. And if I go here to the update log, you can see everything that it's doing. Just a really nice interface that is a lot more friendly to somebody who's doing this for the first time. And the server has closed the connection, so it probably needed to do a quick restart. If I do try to reconnect, I could go ahead and log on in again, and there we go. So now this should say that we are completely up to date, unless if it's still processing step. There you go, system up to date. Now, really cool thing, under software updates here, we have a terminal. So you have full access as if I was over there typing on that computer right now. For example, it probably doesn't have the package, of course. With a Fedora, the default package manager is DNF. So we're going to go sudo DNF install, and we're going to go ahead and grab a neofetch, htop, just in case if it's not already in there. And here you could adjust your font size, and then you could change this to like a slightly lighter, dark, white, really whatever you want. White actually looks kind of good. And there we go. We have everything it's going to need. I'm going to say yes and continue. And that's basically how you install packages. What we're going to be doing now, after all this is done, is actually setting up Docker. Now, if you don't know what Docker is, it's in the simplest terms, it's a way to kind of containerize and separate packages and services. So if you have a media server and maybe like a torrent client running, everything will be kind of separate. They won't rely on the same dependencies. There's a lot less opportunities for them to break, and it's really easy to stop and start them individually. It just makes life easy. So now that that's complete, before we do that, I can type neofetch, and we can see some more specific information about what's going on, which will match up basically with this overview. It's just showing you the general package setup. And also, before we do this, I might as well show you that you don't actually need to use this dashboard necessarily. I'm going to go ahead and exit out of that SSH session, start a new terminal. And if we just do SSH your username at that local IP address, so in this case it's 192.168.0.81, enter. Yes, this is my server. I do trust it. Type in your password, and we're in. And if I do the same neofetch command, it's going to be exactly the same. Additionally, one thing you may want to do is easily move files on your server. So the way I would recommend doing this is opening up the FileZilla application. It's a wonderful FTP client or file transfer protocol. And to connect to this, what you're going to want to do is under host, you just do SFTP. So that's a secure file connection. And then do this just like it was a website. And then that local IP address, so 192.168.0.81. And then same situation under username and password, and then it's going to ask the same thing that we or that it asked us when we connected through the terminal. Do we trust this connection? We do indeed. And then here we can see that we're connected. If I go ahead and drag this down a little bit, you could see more specifically what's going on there. And just as an example, let's say we want to jump over here to the terminal on the web dashboard. mkdir is to make a directory, and let's say I'm eventually going to set up a media server, so I want to make the media directory. And then if I go over here, refresh this, we can see that the media directory is there. So that's just one way to easily connect and manipulate files as well as permissions. If I actually right click on this, I could see the file permissions, and 755 is looking good. So everybody has read and execute privileges, but only the owner can actually write files to that directory. Beautiful. Now, one more thing before we actually get into installing Docker. This is on a laptop. Now, you're not going to want the lid open and the screen on all the time because that's just not good on power. Silly. And to actually disable the computer suspending when you close it, what we're going to want to do is edit a quick file, and that's just going to be a sudo nano etc systemd and logind.conf, just like that. Hit enter, type in your password, and of course we want to make sure we have Nano. Nano is a text editing application that works within terminals like this. So again, just like we installed neofed, sudo dnf install nano, and continue with the installation, and then let's jump into that folder. Here we are. And now in here we're going to have some things commented out. Now if there's a little kind of hashtag before a configuration option, that just means that that is going to be being ignored completely, and it's going to go with the default. Now what we want to uncheck is this one right here, handle suspend key, handle lid switch, as well as handle lid switch docked. And then out of these configuration options, the handle lid switch here, we're going to want to switch this to match the docked one, which is going to be ignore, as well as the handle suspend key. I'm going to go ahead and ignore that because we just don't want our system suspending at all. If we want it to suspend, you might as well turn it off and give it a break. So once these three options here say ignore, what we can do is go Control O to save that and Control X to get out of there. So now what we're going to do is actually restart our systemd login so it will actually do that. And to do that, what we need to do, sudo systemctl, and then we're going to go ahead and restart our systemd-login D. And of course hit enter, and you can close your laptop now, or check to make sure that everything works fine. Now at that point, let's actually go ahead and set up some services in here, and we are going to be doing that with the wonderful world of Docker. Here, I'll link to this down below. This is the official Docker setup for Fedora. And here it's going to go over all basically everything you need to do. There's various installation methods, so you could install using the repository, you can install it from a package, and you can install using the convenience script, which I think is what we will probably do in this case. So to grab the script, we could just go ahead and copy this curl command here, give that a copy, paste it on in there. Okay, so macOS problems, we're going to go ahead and switch to terminal because apparently I can't paste in this window. So new terminal, let's go ahead and log in, 91, just like I showed you guys earlier. There we go, and now paste. So we're grabbing that little script there, and now if I ls, we can see we have git docker sh. So now if I do sudo sh and then the git docker script, just like that, type in our password, it is going to do everything that it needs to do. Since we already just updated our system, it shouldn't take too long at all. And while that does that, one thing I'm going to grab that just makes things a little bit easier is an application called Yacht. I did cover this on the channel previously. It's a newer kind of dashboard to manage and install your Docker containers. You don't need this, but it really makes it easy getting things set up initially. So I'm going to copy that, and over here we can see we have a Docker installed and everything else that we will need to get that up and going. So we should be able to paste this on in, and it says here that to make it so you can run Docker with non-privileged user, you might want to set that up. Might be a good idea. It's not good to run Docker as sudo generally, but I'm just going to go ahead and do it anyway. Make sure that this is actually running sudo service docker status, which it is not running. And let's check that again. There we go. So I just needed to start the service. And now I should be able to get out of there and then create that yacht volume. There we go. And now we could grab this, and this is going to be on the port 8000 to actually connect to it. So give that a copy. Let's paste her on in, enter, and run this as sudo, enter. And then it's going to go ahead and actually pull and download everything it needs and then set up that container. Now, while it does that, I'm going to go ahead and grab our IP address, open this up in a new tab, and then go to the port 8000. Make sure that it's going to be finished up by the time I do this. And there we go. So it should be launching. Should be able to go to that. We'll go to the non-secure port or non-secure location. And here's our Yacht login. Now if we go now back here, we can see the default stuff, and you could obviously change this if you'd like to. This is your default email, and the password is pass. So let's go over here, paste that on in, and then type in pass. And then you can see we are logged in, and the only container we have running at the moment is Yacht. And it's from here you can go ahead and set up whatever services you want on your home network. To do that, if we go under templates here, we can add a new template, and you can see they have some of their own. So I recommend just grabbing this real quick. I'm going to paste that on in, and then I'm going to grab this name because that's going to be the title, and paste that on in because that's going to be the title of that template. Submit. Now under here, we have a full list of all the applications that we can go ahead and grab. I'm going to be doing a quick example with Jellyfin. So if I search that up, we have Jellyfin here, hit deploy. Over here is the official Jellyfin Docker instructions. So you could get a lot of stuff here, as well as Docker compose files and all that to actually get this spun up without using Yacht. But within Yacht, we have our basic settings here. We can continue. Under networking, we're going to want to go ahead and bridge this. And you can see it already has all the ports and everything set up for us. 8090 is just the standard non-secure port. Right here, I'm going to do some changes. I'm actually going to direct this under my host is going to be home, Brandon, and that media folder that we created. And then this in the container can just be as simple as media. And then continue on from there. Time zone value, we're going to want to set that. So if we actually head on over here, I'm going to grab the proper, I just wanted to make sure that that's what it was, and deploy that instance of Jellyfin. And there we go, Jellyfin is spun up. So if we headed over to the web UI, which should take us right to our Jellyfin install, it will then run us through the setup process of this. Now, I do have separate videos on different ways to install this. I don't have a separate Docker video. I might make that in the future, but that's basically how you set it up through Docker. Media, so we just click this. Let's do a movie library. Folders, we should be able to see /media right there. Hit OK, OK. And then next, and actually just to make sure we did this properly, let's go back into here. So let's go to FileZilla. And the beautiful thing about this, we can just go ahead and connect to our last connection. There we go. Under media, I'm actually gonna make a separate folder for movies. And then for example, a separate folder for shows, which is generally a good way to go about it. Now, if I edit this, actually just remove that library and then recreate it. So let's go movies, folders, media, and there they are. So I was just making sure that I got the directories properly set up. So okay, and then of course you could add another one, content type shows, and then this will be the media shows folder. Done, done, done. Next, allow remapping is important. Next, finish, sign in, and there we go. This is our Jellyfin instance. You saw how easy that was to spin up, and this is all running off that old laptop, granted. Now let's see if I can actually get this to work. We got some cat dog. Who doesn't like cat dog? Let's go ahead and drag and drop that right into shows, and then let's go ahead and grab a movie. So under adults, no, not that kind of adults, movies, as evident. There we go. Let's grab The Great Gatsby. That's a good movie. So drag and drop that in there, and you can see all that was added to the queue. We got files moving. I'm gonna not do all of these because this is more of just an example. So let's just do season 2, shall we? So remove from queue, and then while it does that, first we'll kind of see if it's already recognizing it. It's not. So we could go to dashboard under administration, scan all libraries, and we can see that's doing a quick little library scan. And once it's done, we can go back to here. You got next up cat dog. It already pulled everything for us under shows. Not all of them have transferred yet, but we can see what we do got in there. Yeah, 2 of them. Beautiful. Within Yacht Dashboard too, if you actually wanted to use this, we can see what each what each Docker container specifically is using when it comes to your CPU and overall memory consumption. Based on the CPU usage and all that we just talked about, we can afford to put a lot more services on this little laptop here. So for example, templates, if we go to Self-Hosted Pro, there's a lot of things on here. And of course, you don't have to just limit yourself to Docker, but you have File Browser, Guacamole for having a clientless remote desktop gateway, Homer for static home pages, settings, and really a lot more, such as, we keep going down, we can set up a Pi-hole instance. I have a whole separate video on how to do that. We have Plex in here if you prefer that over Jellyfin or MB. TeamSpeak, transmission, a way to store all your books. You can do your Vault Warden, so store all your Bitwarden passwords encrypted on there. And this right here, transmission OpenVPN, is really cool because then you could actually use OpenVPN within this Docker container specifically for a transmission client. Perfect. An example of one that's pretty easy to spin up for example's sake would be something like a code server right here, Microsoft VS Code. So here, all the settings look good. Continue. Of course, we want this to be bridged. Continue. And the config looks fine. Continue. You could add actually under volumes if you wanted to. Actually, let's go ahead and do it. Container, we'll just do Brandon, because I know that will link to my home directory. So we can do home, Brandon, just like that. Continue from there. And now time zone. I could paste in what I pasted earlier and then give ourselves a password for this. Since it's going to show, I'm going to go password 1 and password 1 and proxy domain. I'm just going to ignore that for now, hit deploy, and then it's going to go ahead and pull the image and install everything for us. And there we go. So we can go to the web UI here and then type in the password we just created, that super strong and secure one. And here we are. So I'm going to go ahead and trust and understand that. And this is your very own Microsoft Code Server. And we have our workspace here. If I go ahead and add a folder, let's go ahead and open a folder and let's go to Brandon. And then you can see there, since I linked up the volumes properly, I can actually access my home directory from this code server here. So for example, if I wanted to edit my bash RC, I could go ahead and do that. So here is my bash RC that I'm editing from that server with Microsoft Code, something you might be interested in doing. And of course, I'm going to have a bunch of links in the description showing you how to set up Docker, the commands I use to go ahead and do the little laptop lid suspend trick, and some other resources and things that you might be interested in. With all that, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a thing or two and this has helped you out in some sort of way. And if it did, make sure you like this video, subscribe, and ring that bell so you do not miss any future uploads. With all that, have a beautiful day and goodbye.